Hey guys, welcome to my very first episode of my very first series, Classic Lit Storytime. It's classic, it's lit, it's story time. So, in this series, what I'll be doing is reading classic literature in full, but chapter by chapter. I'm gonna make it digestible, I'm gonna make it easy to stomach. Because a lot of people, the reason they don't read classic literature is because they think it's too complicated, they're gonna have to use their brain and they don't really want to do that, all of these reasons. But I think that reading classic literature is actually a great way to relax, unwind, and learn about the world while doing something that feels pretty awesome. It's not as complicated as it seems. I think the language is a big barrier. As you've probably seen if you've been alive for longer than 20 years, language changes really quickly. We develop new slang, we develop new ways of speaking, and the old ways become outdated pretty quickly. So when you're looking at stuff from 100, 200, 300 years ago, I think really great, really sort of consumable classic literature starts around 1700. The novel isn't really that old when you come to think of it. Shakespeare was really among the first to be writing novels, but I mean, even he wasn't doing novels. So the actual novel, I think Chaucer is, I don't know, I should fact check these things, but hey guys, editing Imogen here, just making some clarifications, specifically about Chaucer, who is commonly mistaken for having written the first novel in English, but in fact, he wrote short stories, the Canterbury Tales, in the 14th century, and an epic poem called Troilus and Cressade. And Cressade is generally regarded as the first fully developed character in English. The first novel in English wouldn't come along until Daniel Defoe's Robinson Crusoe, which was in 1719. Obviously Shakespeare was a playwright. I just had a kind of mind fart there. So thank you. It's not as long as you think that people have been writing novels. People wrote prose and people wrote poetry and people handed down stories. But in terms of actually creating physical books, this technology isn't as old as most people think it is. But anyway, I'm going off track. This is something that will happen a lot, so I guess you better get used to it. So, classic literature is easier to understand than you think. The language is a barrier, but I think these types of formats where you just listen to it, where I explain the meaning behind things and I try and unpack a lot of the insights and things like that, although a really big part of this is me trying to encourage you to come up with your own insights, because I don't have the answers. No one has the answers. Literature is a form of art, and just like any form of art, your interpretation of it is more important than any academic interpretation or, armchair interpretation like the one that I'm going to give. I think the reason why literature is so amazing is because it does allow us to exercise our minds. We will apply our own situation, our own life experiences onto these people. I mean, if you're the sort of person I am, I know not everyone's like that, but I guess if you're interested in doing chapter by chapter read throughs and deep dives into classic literature, you're going to be something like me, because my whole point of doing this, the whole reason I'm here, is because this is what I would have loved to have when I was a teenager. I didn't like school very much. I did quite well academically, but I didn't engage with it. But I loved reading. I loved reading since I was a teeny, tiny little child. As long as I can remember, reading's been my favorite thing. And I'm just glad the internet's been around throughout my life, because that's how I've done a lot of my learning. I've, researched things through the internet. But it would have been a lot cooler for me if, when I was younger, or when I, at any stage, if you're just looking to get into classic literature, to have someone to kind of walk you through it a little bit without being too academic about it, without being too sort of hoity-toity, because I think classic literature does have that reputation for being very hoity-toity, I think a lot of people tend to gatekeep it. So if, you know, I don't really expect that people who are already into literature will love these videos so much, because they might feel like I'm talking down to them. And they probably think, you know, they have their own ideas and they disagree with me, and I don't want to make people angry. That's why I say, you know, these are my interpretations, and it's just really important to form your own opinion about things. Another reason I love literature so much is because I really strongly believe in the scientific method. I think people should get as many different perspectives from as many different types of people as possible on a subject before making an opinion, and even then, don't have your opinion set in stone, because the world just doesn't work like that. We're learning stuff every day, and I think to get bogged down and stuck in super strong opinions are great, but ones that are fixed and you're not open to listening to other people or changing them, just listen to loads of people, read loads of stuff, and that's how you become super smart, basically. I'm sure you're all super smart already anyway. I don't know, I guess I see intelligence a little bit differently to most people. I didn't go to university. I really couldn't engage with school, but I found my way to my dream career through learning for myself. So I guess this is more for you sorts of people. If you're super into academics and you're like, no, you know, you've got to look at what the critics said and you've got to do this by the book and blah, blah, blah. I'm not interested in any of that. But obviously I'm a writer. I've made a career for myself as a writer, which is, you know, doing really well. So I know a little something, something about words, you know, a little something, something. And I just love them. I'm passionate about them, and I hope. Again, when I was younger, I was like, oh well, because I'm not academic, as in I don't enjoy this process of sitting in a classroom and going home and doing homework and that whole monotonous thing. Like, there's no place for me as an intelligent person in the world, but there is. You know, business is all about what you can do, what you can bring, not really so much about, I don't know, what qualifications you have or whatever. Qualifications are really important. If you love school, then crack on, enjoy school. I'm not trying to discourage anyone from getting their education or, you know, doing what they want to do. But if you are someone who feels shut out or feels separate or different, or like you don't fit into the typical mold of what it means to be intelligent, but you think yourself you are intelligent, because guess what? It's okay to think you're intelligent. That's fine. I give you permission to do that. Then this might be the type of thing that really, really sings to you. And I hope there are people out there who it does sing to, because I love sharing my love of literature with the world. I love sharing my love of music with the world as well. My next series is going to be called Lyrics Are Literature, and I'm going to do deep, deep, deep dives into music. And I especially love, I love alternative music. I love 90s alternative. I love 70s, like prog rock. I also love disco. I love R&B. I love hip hop. I love everything. So I guess the way I kind of look at it is this series is Classic Lit Storytime, where I take a more approachable look at classic literature, which is often read by, you know, men in dark rooms with beards who are really serious about stuff. And that's not what this is about. And also, obviously, there's a lot of problematic stuff in old literature because people be stupid back in the day, you know? There are certain things that people didn't get, but I don't think that should stop us from looking at the important lessons and the lessons that actually have something to tell us about the world. And we have to look at where people were problematic in the past, discuss it, understand where it comes from, and then let it go. I guess with culture wars and everything like that at the moment, people are very like, oh, that's wrong. And I'm absolutely disgusted by bigotry. I hate racism. I hate sexism, inequality, homophobia. Just, it makes me feel sick. Get away from me. But I'm not angry at people who were like that because the world was like that. I feel like I'm really lucky. I'm mixed race. I come from a very liberal, in the sort of dictionary definition of the word, family, very laissez-faire. So I didn't grow up with a lot of boundaries, and a lot of, I guess a lot of people are brought up by parents who believe in a lot of stuff, and mine just didn't. So I was kind of free to, you know, make my own way, and also by having, you know, Indian grandpa, Mauritian grandpa, I've been around people that aren't white all the time, and so you understand a very different... Anyway, I'm going off on a huge tangent. This is Classic Lit Storytime, and I'm just really excited to talk to you guys. I've been wanting to set up my YouTube channel for about 3 or 4 years now, and I've just been getting all of the concept stuff ready, and I've been trying to get myself into a position where I've got all of this spare time, which I don't really have the spare time to do it, but screw it, I'm gonna do it anyway. Sorry, I'm just checking myself out. I will do that because I'm new to making videos. If you have any feedback on my presentation or anything about my videos, please let me know. I am brand new to this, which means I'm in that wonderful space where I want to improve. I'm open to all feedback and criticism, because I know I need it. Yeah, I'll do my hair nicer next time. So apart from doing my hair nicer next time, because that goes without saying. Right, so shall we? Sorry, just getting comfy. Shall we get into it? Shall we talk classic literature? So, the very first novel in this series, Fyodor Dostoevsky, is, I think, the greatest author of all time. A lot of people agree with that. He's certainly up there with the best of them. His insights into human nature, the human experience, his understanding of how people and the structures in the world work is just really deep, really insightful. He just gets it. And you can check out some of my shorts to learn a little bit more about him. I've done 5 facts about Dostoevsky and some other videos as well, so I'll link them in the description and maybe in some of these places. But yeah, so shall we get on with it? Shall we just start reading? I am a sick man. I'm a spiteful man. I'm an unattractive man. I believe my liver is diseased. However, I know nothing at all about my disease and do not know for certain what ails me. I don't consult a doctor for it and never have, though I have a respect for medicine and doctors. Besides, I'm extremely superstitious, sufficiently so to respect medicine anyway. I'm well educated enough not to be superstitious, but I am superstitious. No, I refuse to consult a doctor from spite. That you probably will not understand. Well, I understand it though. Of course, I can't explain who it is precisely that I'm mortifying in this case by my spite. I'm perfectly well aware that I cannot pay out the doctors by not consulting them. I know better than anyone that by all this I'm only injuring myself and no one else. But still, if I don't consult a doctor, it is from spite. My liver is bad, well, let it get worse. I've been going on like that for a long time, 20 years. Now I am 40. I used to be in government service, but I'm no longer. I was a spiteful official. I was rude and took pleasure in being so. I did not take bribes, you see, so I was bound to find recompense in that, at least. A poor jest, but I will not scratch it out. I wrote it thinking it would sound very witty, but now that I've seen it myself that I only wanted to show off in a despicable way, I'll not scratch it out on purpose. When petitioners used to come for information to the table at which I sat, I used to grind my teeth at them, and felt intense enjoyment when I succeeded in making anybody unhappy. I almost did succeed. For the most part, they were all timid people, of course. They were petitioners, but of the uppish ones, there was one officer in particular that I could not endure. He simply would not be humble and clanked his sword in a disgusting way. I carried on a feud with him for 18 months over that sword. At last, I got the better of him. He left off clanking it. That happened in my youth, though. But do you know, gentlemen, what was the chief point of my spite? Why, the whole point, the real sting of it lay in the fact that continually, even in the moment of the acutest spleen, I was inwardly conscious with shame. That I was not only spiteful, but not even an embittered man, that I was simply scaring sparrows at random and amusing myself by it. I might foam at the mouth, but bring me a doll to play with, give me a cup of tea with sugar in it, and maybe I should be appeased. I might even be genuinely touched, though probably I should grind my teeth at myself afterwards and lie awake at night with shame for months after. That was my way. I was lying when I said just now that I was a spiteful official. I was lying from spite. I was simply amusing myself with the petitioners and with the officer, and in reality, I could never become spiteful. I was conscious every moment in myself of many, very many elements absolutely opposite to that. Felt them positively swarming in me, the opposite elements. I knew that they had been swarming in me all my life and craving some outlet from me, but I would not let them. They tormented me until I was ashamed. They drove me to convulsions and sickened me. At last, how they sickened me. Now, are not you fancying, gentlemen, that I am expressing remorse for something now? That I'm asking your forgiveness for something? I'm sure you're fancying that. However, I assure you I do not care if you are. It was not only that I could not become spiteful, I did not know how to become anything, neither spiteful nor kind, neither a rascal nor an honest man, neither a hero nor an insect. Now, I'm living out my life in my corner, taunting myself with the spiteful and useless consolation that intelligent man cannot become anything seriously, and it's only the fool who becomes anything. Yes, a man in the 19th century must and morally ought to be preeminently a characterless creature. A man of character, an active man, is preeminently a limited creature. That is my conviction of 40 years. I'm 40 years old now, and you know 40 years is a whole lifetime. To live longer than 40 years is bad manners. It's vulgar, immoral. Who lives beyond 40? Answer that sincerely and honestly. I will tell you who do. Fools and worthless fellows. I tell an old man that to their face, all these venerable old men, all these silver-haired and reverend seniors, I tell the whole world that to its face. I have a right to say so, for I shall go on living to 60 myself, to 70, to 80. Stay, let me take breath. You imagine no doubt, gentlemen, that I want to amuse you. You are mistaken in that too. I am by no means a mirthful person. However, irritated by all this babble, and I feel that you are irritated, you think fit to ask me who I am, then my answer is, I am a collegiate assessor. I was in the service that I might have something to eat, and solely for that reason. And when last year a distant relation left me 6,000 rubles in his will, I immediately retired from the service and settled down in my corner. I used to live in this corner before, but now I have settled down in it. My room is a wretched, horrid one in the outskirts of town. My servant is an old countrywoman, ill-natured from stupidity, and moreover, there is always a nasty smell about her. I am told that the Petersburg climate is bad for me, and that with my small means it is very expensive to live in Petersburg. I know all that better than these sage and experienced counsellors and monitors, but I am remaining in Petersburg. I'm not going away from Petersburg. I'm not going away because, why, it is absolutely no matter whether I am going away or not going away. But what can a decent man speak of with most pleasure? Answer, of himself. Well, so I will talk about myself. And so ends chapter 1. So, What does chapter 1 of Notes from the Underground tell us? What's it about? What's Dostoevsky trying to say? What's the underground man trying to say? First off, I quite like the talk about doctors. I think it's quite relevant to today. It's kind of giving anti-vax vibes, because he trusts doctors, he believes in doctors, but he doesn't go to doctors out of spite. And I think this is just a really good notion of how irrational people are. And really, I think that's what this whole chapter is setting us up for. And it's the philosophical ideology that it's kind of breaking apart like this. At the time, the dominant kind of philosophy was rationalism, and everyone was celebrating that man is this reasonable creature. You know, we still believe this. Human beings have reason, and we can think, and we are able to solve problems, and we have dominion over the world. So we just use reason to solve all our problems, right? Unfortunately, human beings, just like nature, just like the world, we are irrational. So yes, we're capable of reason, but we're typically capable of reason when we're thinking about things, when we're postulating, when we're coming up with ideas in the moment, in the heat of the moment. A lot of us aren't very rational. As a very ordinary man living an ordinary life, explaining ordinary situations, speaking with a huge sense of superiority as if he is the only one that sees everything and everyone else is a stupid minion and they just don't get it. And you do get the strong impression that this is defensiveness, that this underground man feels inferior, you know, it smacks of inferiority. But he has no idea, and I think those are the really interesting things, how irrational he is and how little self-awareness he has. Even just from his ramblings in this first chapter, we can tell he's not got a stable sense of who he is, he hasn't got a stable identity, and he's just looking out at the world, judging everything very harshly, including himself. You know, he doesn't like other people, he doesn't seem to like himself, but he's adopted a position of superiority because it's the only defense mechanism he appears to have. And I think, yeah, I think it's interesting that he talks about doctors, and he's not superstitious, so he believes in doctors. He's too intelligent to be superstitious, but he's superstitious anyway. I mean, we've all met people like that, right? People who they say they're not superstitious, but then in the next sentence they'll say something extremely superstitious because they're not self-aware. So I think this is exploring that very, very human, very, very real tendency to be hypocrites, to say one thing and do another. So while many of these traits are extremely common, we see them in a lot of people, it's the underground man's bitterness and resentment that really set him apart and really show him up for being the self-defeating, masochistic type of person he is. And this is something that exists in society, something that's quite common in society, and I guess it stems from having insufficient love during childhood, or perhaps having too much attention during childhood. You know, the affection and regard and praise situation seems to be very Goldilocks. If parents go too much either way, you end up with people that aren't very well adjusted. And I think this is what this underground man is. He is not able to properly see how he is in society. He can't see himself and he can't see other people. And what this seems to lead to is this self-defeating behavior. This is the beginning of existentialism. This is the birth of, you know, for all of his faults, the underground man takes extreme pride in the fact that he is free. He is free to destroy his own life. He's free to destroy his liver. he takes great pride in the fact that as a human being, he can do whatever he wants. And there are so many of us, even if we don't have the bitterness and the flagrant disregard for humanity that the underground man has, a lot of us do have this tendency to stick a spanner in the works, to mess everything up, because that way at least you're still in control, right? You know, yeah, my liver's shot, I'm ill, but I've done it to myself. This is a very deep human tendency. And it's something that we should try and fight, because it, let's face it, it does come from, not feeling like we have enough value, not feeling like we have enough worth. And that's why people do stuff like that, because they don't feel good. And I think that's the other thing that's really great about The Underground Man and Notes from the Underground. It's exploring how feeling bad about ourselves is what leads to outwardly undesirable behavior. And people who do feel badly about themselves and who do think nasty things about other people, they don't do well in the world, We're very social beings. And I think Notes from the Underground is just an amazing lesson. Especially, I read it the first time when I was an angsty teenager, and I think it is a great novel for angsty teenagers to read, because it's like the Underground Man never got out of that funk, So it's quite a fun way to be like, oh my goodness, yeah, I have these tendencies. And as long as you're self-aware, as long as you can admit that you have negative traits, you can overcome them. You can overcome anything as long as you're willing to face up to the truth and work really hard. Unfortunately, unless you are very privileged and lucky, there's not a lot you can do without working hard. And we will learn that the Underground Man doesn't really like to work very hard. So I can't wait to see you for the next chapter. Thank you so much for reading this novel with me and for having tea with me. And yes, chapter 2 will be next Sunday, same time, 5 p.m. EST, 10 p.m. UK time. And I cannot wait to see you there. Thank you so much for sharing this with me. I just thought of another really important point. So there's one point where Dostoevsky says, I was just scaring sparrows and amusing myself by it. Now this is something that I definitely see people do. And they're not even aware that they do it, but it's so common that you see people who don't know how to get attention any other way. Maybe I used to be one of them. They don't know any other way to get attention other than by either making a fool of themselves or being rude or making other people feel bad at the very, very worst edge of human nature. Sometimes when we feel bad about ourselves, one of the ways we make ourselves feel better is by making someone else feel bad. And just in that little moment, in that moment of distraction, you get a little bit of relief. But actually, and the Underground Man talks about shame a lot, every time you do something like that, a new little notch of shame just piles on top. And you see this throughout. You see how the Underground Man's behavior and actions compound into making him more bitter and more angry. And he's just stuck in the loop.